Welcome to the Maverick podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Rose. And as always, a big shout out to all the free spirits, the independent thinkers, the Mavericks who are joyfully walking their unique path. Today, we have a repeat guest, and I'm very excited to announce that Agnes Belesne is coming back on. She is a very gifted feng shui practitioner and astrologer and an intuitive counselor. And I know her well. Her work is spectacular. You know, we had so many emails and questions that came in from the original podcast we did. We decided we should get back together and answer some of those questions. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think you're going to enjoy it. Come on board, Agnes.
Hi, Kathy. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Very happy to have you back on. You look spectacularly radiant.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me back. And I would like to tell you that every time you announce the program, Mavericks walking as free spirits, that makes me so happy. That
of course.
Is just so good to hear, you know.
Yeah, because you are a maverick. You think independently, you ask questions, and you think outside the box. Definitely.
And it feels good for both of us, you know,
yes.
to walk the way we do. I'm very happy too that we have received so many questions.
Yes, and I'm glad that we get to do kind of a question and answer. I have a list of them here. I don't know if you've received some that I haven't, but let us first just start with you giving an explanation of how you work feng shui, what it means to you before we get into the questions, so that if somebody hasn't seen the first episode you were in, maybe we can fill them in.
Yes. And so I'm working with feng shui officially since 2005. And I was always very in tune with my environment, how to shift energies, how changing, rearranging a space changes the frequency or the vibration of our lives. And interestingly and luckily enough, I started to work right away with Lillian Tu, who is a feng shui grandmaster, originally from Hong Kong. And she moved back now to Malaysia. And so it was also the start of her post-corporate career. So she and I sort of were running in parallel, that I used to work in the corporate work. She did that too. And then we turned into these other type of approaches to life. So I engaged with her after we have lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. That was 2005, you know, speaking of hurricane season. And she was very gracious and supportive. And so when you can start with a blank, you know, sheet of paper in your life, that's so much better if you arrange everything based on the principles of feng shui. This is what I did, and it worked out just phenomenally. So this is briefly what I can share, you know, based on the origins. In terms of developing, other than the formal studies, I pay a lot of attention and have access, luckily, to some of the ancient texts. With my interest and background in history, to me it's of extreme importance that I actually can research and read the original documents, some of them that are translated into English or other languages, and the lineage texts that have very specific details and descriptions. And I try to incorporate those into my practice.
Wonderful. I didn't know you were reading those texts. That's wonderful.
Only the ones that are available in languages that I can read.
Well, I know that after our last conversation, some of the questions that people sent in were quite interesting. And part of, I think, their questions are based on the fact that there are many different types or forms or practices of feng shui. There's a Western version, which I think has been very simplified. And then there's the version you do, which is you can describe what that is, but it's oriented towards the directions of the house and the flying stars and all that, correct?
Yes, so that's correct. And even within Asia, there are several schools, and even within this flying star approach, there are widely debated like side aspects that certain group of people believe this is how it works, other groups believe how that works. And so I also wanted to bring this up anyway before answering the questions, that I think the most important aspect for all of us practicing feng shui is essentially mindfulness and awareness of space. So there's no need to get lost in the gloom and doom or the superstitious or the micro details. Do whatever feels good to you, like have a big picture, sort of like how we practice astrology, right, Kathy?
Mm-hmm.
Like with the big bells or aspect, sort of that, like if you have the big picture correct, if you have the setup, the basic flow of energy correct, you always can play, fine-tune, tweak the details, but there is no need to get lost in them or stress over or panic that like it's impossible to get everything 100% right. And so back to your question, it's the flying star feng shui that I practice. It is based, the flying stars are related to stars, but they are also related to elements as well. And it works in 20-year periods. And we will not have the time, I think, today to talk at length about the upcoming period 9 that will begin in February 2024. But that is one of the major energy changes around us. And so this 9 times 20-year period started in 1864. So we will have the last 20 years of that. And then we start again another 180-year-long period. So just to put it into context, where we are now in time and space.
Yeah, and there's a lot of very interesting information about these periods. You introduced me to period 8 back when we first met, and I found it very relevant. But you know what's fascinating, real quick before we go into the questions, you mentioned that there are many different schools and many approaches. And, you know, through the 40 years I've been in metaphysics, I have been introduced to many of those different forms of feng shui, and some of them are very strict rule based, like you cannot do this, or you know, terrible things will happen and so forth. You must do this for good energy. And as a very strong Maverick person, if somebody tells me an absolute rule, I tend to rebel. I tend to go, don't tell me what I can do. You know, so I like your approach because it's not so strict and rule based. It is intuitive. It is see how it feels for you. There are definite approaches that you take and they work for me, but it's not based on absolute strict rules. And I just love that.
And, you know, to that, and knowing you that you would do the exact opposite if I would tell you what to do, that's incorporated in my practice, by the way. But we can't forget that feng shui is really thousands of years old, and it originated, yin feng shui originally was an approach how to arrange tomb places in cemeteries. It was essentially a preparation for the afterlife, very similarly how the pyramids and the sarcophags were placed in ancient Egypt. So from this yin formation, there came the realization that we don't have to, that we are not only are interested in working on afterlife good luck, but we need good luck in the here and now. And so back in the Chinese dynasties 2000 years ago, their living space setup was very different than modern homes or modern feng shui is today. Like I can jump into the first question with that, because one of our dear questioner had the question how to go about toilets, or to close or not to close toilets, or what's the rule. And because when feng shui originated, there were no toilets at all. There were no bathrooms in the living spaces. So this is why it is such a touchy subject in the modern homes, what to do with it. And it also relates back to our natural self. Like if you think about your pets, your dogs, your cats, they cover up after themselves, right? Like when they poop, they just cover up the poop. So I sort of would like to bring in this very plain and very straightforward reminder that it's good to close the toilet. But again, there are many variations. Like if in a home, you have a tiny special room for the toilet only, where you can shut the door. If you leave the toilet open, it's not a big deal because it's in a separated room anyway, where you would close the doors. So like that, just an approach that makes sense, whether it's in a part of a larger bathroom or again a separated little room. You would not want the energies from the toilet come into your living space, but you can separate it by closing the door or closing the toilet simply.
Good advice. Good advice. And I know one of the other questions was about the burners on your stove. And, I've heard you have to use all 4 burners. If you don't, or 5, or however many you have, if you don't, you have an imbalance. I mean, that makes logical sense.
It does make, and again, it's like going with the flow. I am personally trying to use all of them for these reasons. But the similarity between the two questions, bathrooms and kitchens are not rooms or spaces in any home where we would emphasize energy. So they are not spaces where we would put any enhancers to bring in good energy. So bathrooms we don't work with at all. And kitchens, depending on the people living in the house, there are certain directions where it is best not to have your kitchen. But within that, as long as you use certain directions, energy like electricity or gas flowing into your home through the kitchen from certain direction, it's good. And yes, the more balanced use of the burners, the happier you will be.
And, the bottom line, I'm sure, is with any of these questions, just keep your space clean and decluttered and move the energy around by keeping it clean. Don't let it accumulate dust or get dirty or ugly.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And, that was one of the questions, which is, what is the number one thing to shift energy in one's life? So I'd be curious your answer on that.
So my answer is action creates energy. The more you do, the more you can do. And so in specific feng shui terms, it relates back to what you just said. Action creates energy. If you feel stuck, move your things around. Throw out what's not needed, clean out the corners, and simply be daring, be adventurous, have courage to move around the furniture a little bit. Like in offices where you use the same desk for decades, and maybe a desk that you received from your ex-business partner, be aware, like, what is the energy that is tied to certain objects. Obviously, you need a new table if you separate it from that business partner and you have established yourself individually. The same with beds or mattresses. Like post-divorce, if anybody's going through a rough emotional time, please buy a new bed, a new mattress, like invest into your future love life and relationships by physically getting rid of the energy that is associated so heavily with another relationship. And even with objects on your desk. I just had a client who placed horses on her desk as per my advice, and the good luck didn't turn out to be as intensely good as we both would have hoped for. It turned out that those horses had a horrible background story from a burnt down antique collection, to summarize it. So it does matter what you place next to you. So horses was a good advice, but they should have been like something new, sparkly, shiny, energizing, or natural, but not something with a heavily attached negative energy that came with those little, very expensive statues,
Ooh, that is a very interesting story, because everything is energy and it carries with it its past. Even if you try to cleanse it, sometimes it's just best to let it move on.
Yes, but so the answer to the question, action creates energy. The more you do, the more you can do. So start by doing, start by shifting, turning around, moving, cleaning, decluttering.
Keeping the life force circulating.
Exactly. And also that reminds me also of lights, darkness, letting light in is also very important. A very important aspect of all of that.
Open the blinds. If you have those kinds of blinds where you can change where the louvers are, open them up.
Yes. Yes.
And open the windows, as you talked about last time.
Yes.
Sometimes it's even just paint the walls, or I can tell a big difference in life force in the house even when I vacuum, because vacuuming moves energy. It's an amazing thing. Just vacuum the carpets.
Which is so interesting, not only vacuuming, but I was experimenting with this little invention. You know how there are these new robotic little self-walking vacuums? We can put a crystal on it. We can put sage on it. We can put flowers on it. We can put essences on top of it, so that while it cleans, it actually spreads good energy in a more modern way. But back to your cleaning point, my personal favorite is cleaning the windows and washing the doors.
Yeah. Yeah, because don't the windows kind of operate as the eyes of the house in a way?
Yes, it's like, wiping off your glasses. You need to do that from time to time. And so cleaning the windows is a big thing for me. Washing the doors. And I believe one of the questions was about doors, right, Kathy?
Yes. Yes. Somebody wrote in and said that she had always heard many feng shui people talking about keeping all the doors in your house closed. And she said it seemed to her that would restrict the flow of energy instead of opening it. So she wanted to see what you had to say about that.
So I couldn't agree more with her that you would need to leave the doors open. So the basic principle is to let the energy flow and open it up the best you can. Now, there are certain situations, like when in a home, in a certain month or in a certain year, or related to someone who lives in that house, if there is some very negative or not forward moving or not growing energy, then it's okay for a time to sort of separate that room. Like, I will give you a very practical example. If somebody is not feeling well, if you have somebody ill or sick at the house, you naturally would close the door, to give them quiet, private time, privacy within the home. But by the same token, you also don't necessarily want those energies to spread in the house.
Mhm.
And so we always can fix negative energies much more efficiently in a separated space. So for in this example, after somebody recovers, you would restructure the energy in that room and then open it up and, reincorporate it into the general flow of the house.
Mhm. And people would probably ask, how do you restructure that energy? To me, it seems like the first thing you would do is open the windows and, of course, change the bedding, dust, vacuum, move some things around. I mean, you can palpably feel the difference when you do that.
Always, always, always,
Mhm.
always. Mhm.
Simple, practical advice. I knew one feng shui practitioner whose approach seemed very ritualistically magical, meaning, you have to take a half a lemon, basically put it under your armpit, spin around 3 times and chant this special mantra, and then luck would happen. And I thought, there is no way. I don't believe it. I'm not going to do it. Give me something practical that makes sense to me, and I'll give it a shot.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. Of course, there are very special mantras that not like with turning around with the lemon, not like that, but there are special mantras that in extreme situations can work very effectively, especially to ward off negative energy, like after a situation like we discussed. But of course, if you would be in a dark, cluttered, dirty room and you just chant your mantras, nothing will happen. So it's a co-creational process. And like we mentioned it last time, there is a 3D dimension to feng shui, and we also can add higher dimensions too. But let's get first things first. and
yeah, foundational, basic, practical things like keep your house clean. Although I know that one of my clients contacted you after this podcast, after the first one, and you had a consultation with her and you advised her to move her office around. And apparently some really great things have happened from it.
Yes, and I'm very happy that she had so much success, and she's on the way to have even more. It also has to do that we all have personal directions, so we have to harmonize the good energies or the lucky energy spots of the house with the person in the house and also with the year we are in. So and therefore feng shui is a dynamic, very practical approach where the energy changes from one year to the next, even from 1 month to the next. And I think one of the questions wasn't it that somebody was asking about that, like how energy, or if they have to rearrange the home?
Yeah, she said, is it really the case I have to reorganize my house every year as the numbers and directions change, move all the heavy furniture, change which room we sleep in, redecorate with different colors? She said it just sounds like too much work.
Yes. Well, sometimes it is a lot of work, but like I said, action creates energy, and the more you do, the more you can do. Of course, you don't have to change the direction of your bed every year. There are certain, so that this is why it is important to get your personal directions in relation to the house's best directions, right? Because if in a certain year or if in a certain month, let's say your success direction is afflicted or your health direction is afflicted, then on a monthly basis, you always can tweak and block or change, improve those energies with little spotlights, like, little objects you can place that you can work with. So Ideally, if the house is arranged for the person, there is no need to rearrange everything every year, but you always have to fine tune it every
Mm-hmm.
year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we moved into a house just 3 months ago, brand new house. And in some of the rooms, there really is not a lot of choice as based on the furniture we have,
Mhm.
based on where you can place it. So then when it comes to rearranging furniture, I'm looking at probably just changing art, moving pillows, putting different colors, things like that, because I can't actually rearrange the big, heavy pieces of furniture
Yes.
in those rooms.
Yes, but you also can add scents.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make people aware that feng shui is a full body sensory experience optimally. So you feel good in a clean home. You see things properly in a lighted, in a room with good lighting, and then smelling, touching. So you can use all of your senses to increase and improve your energy. So yes, if you have a big armchair, you can't move that, but it makes a difference if you throw silk or velvet or animal fur onto it. Like it makes a difference if there are patterns or no patterns. And it also makes a difference if a room smells good,
Mm-hmm.
clean, but also if you want to introduce something to please your environment, then that's a very valid option too, to uplift the energies like that. And you can add plants, you can add flowing water. So tweaking energy can work like that too. If you don't have the option to move the furniture, you can introduce elements in a variety of forms, not only colors, but something more sensory, something more sensual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, I want to remind people that you have a line of feng shui art designed specifically to activate certain energies. You sent me 4 of your new ones, and we'll be putting that on screen. I love what you sent with the 100 birds and the 1,000 birds. And I know you have the 100 birds in turquoise, and the 1,000 birds in either golds or turquoise. Tell me about that and where you would advise people to put it. They're beautiful pieces, by the way.
Thank you so much. I really love them. So, originally, as you see here behind me, 100 birds is a very traditional feng shui and also Taoist message because birds are messengers from the universe. And so 100 or 10 times 100, 1,000 birds are supposed to bring really good news from the universe. Because of the color schemes, how I have created them this year, they would work amazingly in anybody's home on the north, east, or southeast walls because it has some water energy. And so that would work for increasing opportunities in someone's career. If you feel stuck, but you would work towards promotion where you work, you could use that to improve your own work situation by bringing in new opportunities. So it's feng shui is never to receive something undeserved or opportunistic. It's always about putting in the work on your end, putting in your good energy towards a positive goal. And so these 1,000 or 100 birds would work like that, for a career sector, as well as in the east or southeast, if you want to bring in growth, health to family members, and then the southeast would be for revenue, improving your flow by bringing in new clients, new opportunities, new projects.
So they can order that on your site.
Yes.
What is your
Yes.
site again? Say it.
So it's my name in one word, Agnes belleznay.com.
Okay. And the last name is Beleznay.
Yes.
We'll have it on the screen too, so people can see.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to mention that like one of my local clients who is a real estate agent actually is using these 1000 birds. It's a larger size, 60 by 60 print, and in these modern light Florida homes. The minute she has the listing, she puts it up. So it's like brand new. It's currently exhibited in one of her new listings. I keep you posted with the good news about that.
That makes a lot of sense. If more realtors who stage homes or participate in staging the homes that they have listed did that, wow, what a great concept, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So people can get some of the feng shui art, like the 1000 birds or the 100 birds. It can be printed on canvas. It can be printed on paper too, correct?
It can be printed on paper. It can be printed on bamboo. And like I mentioned in the last episode, in today's digital world, you can use it in digital form too, as a screensaver on your phone. What I used to do, and I should get back to that practice, it's just too many things happening. I used to have the 100 birds when I started my business as an image on the invoices. I used to send out. And that was the first very successful practice to bring in new clients. Whoever received an invoice with the 100 birds had a tendency to refer new people. So you can spread messages like that too.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. So you also have an image that has 100 hearts with the birds in it. So when would you want to use the hearts?
So those would be, and most of the new art has actually been created with the upcoming period 9 in mind. And so those phoenix-like birds with the 100 hearts, with the yellow-orange coloring, are meant to be for the south side. That will be like a major direction in the upcoming period 9. And that would serve the purpose of really reinventing yourself. Think of phoenix energies, transformation. If you need to change your business, your approach to business, some of your projects, or your life in general, something about yourself, then I would advise that you put a bird, a phoenix, on every heartstring of yours, whether those heartstrings are attached to your children, to your family, friends, to your business, and activate the energy like that.
My office faces south, so that might be a good one for me.
That's very good, Kathy. Yes.
So we have time. Let's talk a little bit about period 9 and all that offers and how people can work with it and understand it.
Okay. So there is a change in the meaning of the numbers. So that's the biggest shift in period 9. And some of the layouts and some of the number sequences that were interesting and forward moving in period 7 and 8, the so-called parent string, and another sequence was the pearl string numbers. They are no longer functioning. So to give a very practical example, the number 2 in the current period is associated with health issues or potential illnesses. It's an earth element, but a negative earth element number. So this year or the previous years, I was trying to avoid to emphasize that direction. So it was best to tone down. Now, as we move to period 9, this unlucky number becomes a lucky number. So the ruling number is 9. And then so after 9, the sequence will start again 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. So therefore 9 is a very positive number. And then number 1 that's right next to it is called a prince number. So as if number 9 would be the king, and there is the first prince and the second prince. So number 1 and number 2 are prince stars in the upcoming period. And so a combination and variation of success and financial energies will be coming from different directions. Also, how we interpret the existing layouts will be different, the mountain and water stars. So in other words, where wealth and from where relationship luck will come from. And the elemental combination of this will change too. Because interestingly, even though we do not have the pearl and parent strings numbers in the flying star chart, in each of the 9 little squares, if you add up the flying star numbers, so the yearly number, the mountain, and the water star numbers, they will add up either to 9 or they are a multiplication of the number 3. So this numeric energy is an added level to this period 9. And what I find very interesting that one of the basic theories in Feng Shui is what we also can find, of course, in other religions, traditions, is this threesome or threefold energy of on the earth, above the earth, below the earth. So like energies that come to us, that we create and that we have given in a mundane reality. So I find it very interesting that when overall humanity comes into these changing, developing times in terms of consciousness, in terms of being galactic beings, then at the same time, Feng Shui changes into a period where everything twirls around this number 3 and opening up essentially to higher realms.
That is interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And it's very complex too, the entire system you're talking about. So do numbers have a particular direction, or does it depend on the period you're in? The direction for that number changes. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so the numbers have to do with the place. So which direction a place faces. So the entrance to a house, to an apartment, to a townhouse, to an office. What is the facing and what is the sitting direction? And so while the numbers will not change, but how we would need to use them will change this year. So numbers from previous periods will have a waning effect, and numbers from this period will have a growing effect. But it's not good or bad. You still will have a best spot for water star for finances, and you still will have a best spot for health and relationships. It just possibly will be, we would activate a different spot within the space. That's
so for people who have had consultations with Feng Shui during the 8 period, they need to revisit that and potentially have it again now as we enter the 9 period.
Yes, and with everything. So I'm looking at your mandala on your door and on your wall. And for example, people who have your mandalas, they can use them to activate and reactivate the energy. So while carefully protecting your art, it's best if they put it out either into sunshine or moonlight, depending on which mandala of yours they have, to increase the frequency or reactivate the frequency of them. And that way they can use your mandala to place it into a different spot or into a different direction in the home.
Yeah. You know, what was fascinating was when I was in the art period for those 12 years or so creating mandalas, and using Swarovski crystals in them, I could absolutely, without a doubt, feel the mandala come alive and radiate energy, especially amplified by the Swarovskis. And I could tell the difference in the energy based on the colors and the patterns. And it made feng shui palpable to me because it is all energy in the end.
It really is. And you know what? Interesting that you said it, because I also remember that one art of yours with the large brown painting with the stones, with the pebbles.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me was like also the quintessential earth energy. So
Mm-hmm.
even though not shiny and bright, but the stones, the pebbles brought that alive too, but with a different frequency or with a different vibration.
Yes, it's all very real. And if people would use their instincts, they will feel that, and they don't need explanation in order to feel it.
They don't need explanation to feel it, but they can pick my brain for math.
Yes, yes. So, I have had clients where I talk to them about the importance of purging, cleansing, decluttering. And they have mentioned, well, I can do it in the entire house except for one room, which is my husband's office, which he won't let me touch. And it's a feng shui nightmare. And it's interesting how you navigate that.
Yes. So, first of all, there is nothing more important than to educate the husbands. And they can give me a call, and I'm happy to do, the work for them, because I see both, in the corporate world, I see when wives of high-ranking C-level executives are coming and bringing me or go themselves and do the office, and the husband is not allowed until everything is placed perfectly. I really believe that once someone experiences the uplifting, forward-moving energies, that it's so hard in today's world. And, I really would like to give credit to all of the hardworking guys who for decades are providers and working for their families, trying to do the most. And it's lackluster, after it's hard to keep a motivational level. So if they would experience what a little spark of joy, freshness, and even from their perspective, just an amazing co-creational vibe that would flow into their lives by letting go of certain items, the favorite gray t-shirt, or whatever that is, it really works wonders. And you don't have to believe in it. You don't. It still will work for anybody amazingly.
Well, I have to mention to the listeners that Agnes is a very gifted astrologer. And one of the things I think about with feng shui when you come in and you uplift the energy is it's very much like a Uranus transit, because when you receive a transit or a solar arc from Uranus, the job Uranus has is to circulate life force, is to release stagnation, release stale energies, and to engage you in moving forward in a new adventure in some way. And so having your house refreshed or your life refreshed by the adjustments that are made in a feng shui consultation seems very much like receiving a Uranus cycle with some Venus thrown in, because it would be beautiful too.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I love that you brought up the Uranian energies, which is very much associated with electricity. But electricity to me also means electrifying with music and sound. And so that's very much part of, we talked about the sensory experiences and we didn't mention music, but the Uranian electric energy can very well translate it into lighting and lights, as we said. It very well can be translated into a variety of musical forms.
Mm-hmm.
And music creates frequency and energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very much part of feng shui too.
Oh, that is a great point to make. And I even have a little Tibetan bell. It's just right outside my office door in the entryway. And sometimes when I just ring that Tibetan bell between sessions or through the house, just I can feel the vibes, of the sound waves circulating and moving energy. What I really want to manifest is a drum. I want a drum, and I want to manifest the perfect drum. And I would like to start working with those sound waves also, because I think that makes a big difference. And I always talk about the fact, and I think this is part of feng shui, that when you're cooking, because I love to cook, when I'm cooking, if I'm singing or playing music, that energy goes into the food, which then goes into our body. And you can feel the difference in food that you eat when you made it and you were in a happy mood.
Yes, and also a lot of people pay attention to their diet actually based on these principles, that they make sure that they eat all 5 elements, meaning every time they eat, they have the 5 elemental colors on their plate. So they have something green, something red, something white, something yellow, something bluish. So it's interesting that you can just be aware of the different variety of energies that you bring them to you, whether it's food, music, senses, colors, but the key word is in a balanced form.
Mm-hmm. I do want to just say, so for most people who have a feng shui consultation for their house, it's better for you if they can provide a blueprint of the house, right?
Yeah, that would be great. A blueprint, photographs, or even video. With today's technology, we can have a Zoom walkthrough, which is really the beauty of today's technology, that I'm sitting in Florida and I can feng shui a house in Australia or other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Well, thank you. And it's always great talking to you about this. And it's so incredibly helpful. You're doing good work in the world. And I encourage people to go to your site, look at the beautiful art. It's an easy action step. And then they can talk to you to ask you where to place it, right?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And to all the listeners, don't forget, action creates energy. Don't overthink, just do it. Clean it, declutter, move the furniture. It will shift, it will unstuck. It will be your little magical world after that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Bye for now, Agnes. Thank you for
Bye,
everything.
Kathy. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.